everybody. Welcome to Bill Whittle Live. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is Monday, January 30th of 2017. We've got a bunch of really hot stories today, and I think it's just the beginning of what we're going to be seeing as a really tumultuous kind of couple of weeks and months ahead of us. Let me start on this discussion about the so-called Muslim ban by saying I am absolutely astonished, and I mean astonished, at what Donald Trump has done in such a short period of time. There's some things to criticize, and we'll get to those in a minute. But the speed that he has moved with, and the it seems like every single thing he did that he said he would do, he's at least started on in his first week in office. He's just been in office, 10 days now, something like that. And it's just absolutely amazing how fast he is moving on these things. Needless to say, there's going to be pushback and there's going to be flack for all of this, but it's the man has got a lot of courage. I think anybody has to give him credit for that. It's just been unbelievable what's happening so quickly. So as usual, the left is in absolute panic mode, absolute meltdown mode, and there have been a few things, I think, some unforced errors on the part of Team Trump that could be avoided. Well, again, we'll get to those in a minute. But basically, as we stand now, we're probably 3 or 4 days into an executive order issued by Donald Trump restricting certain types of immigrants into the United States. The left, of course, has called it a ban on Muslims. I have a friend who's a big liberal. It's hard sometimes. But he put up a 5-paragraph post talking about how this isn't America and how certain ethnic groups have always been picked on, and this is just, didn't we learn our lessons from the Japanese internment and all the rest? This ban on Muslims is simply un-American. There's a lot to say about that, first of which is it's not a ban on Muslims. In my understanding, there's no mention of the word Islam in the executive order at all. He's banning immigrants temporarily from, I want to say 6 countries. I think that's correct. And they are Iran, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Sudan, and Ethiopia, Yemen and Ethiopia, I think, if it's very close to that group. So of the top 5 Muslim populations in the world, none of them are on this list. It doesn't affect any of those people. It does affect people coming from those particular zones because those people are not immigrants. And that's something I want to talk about here in a minute because I think that's a big part of it as well. Neil, can we take a look at those first pictures here? They're protesting in LAX. You can see here, you just go ahead and switch that over. There you go. That's guaranteed to do some good, I can tell you. As a person who flies in and out of that airport fairly frequently, nothing would make me more sympathetic to your cause than basically lining up and blocking traffic to make sure that we heard all about things that we've been hearing all about all the rest of the time. So there's the situation at LAX. I want to say that was last night. But I'm much more interested, I think, in this next picture. Go ahead and swing that over, Neil, if you can. And I'll tell you what's so interesting about this. Let's just look at each one of those things. First, it's really interesting. The only sign in there that looks like it's a professionally made sign is the one in the back that says, "No, stop Trump, Pence." And that's a professional poster made by some group like International Answer or some other Soros-funded, professional organization. So we saw those all during the Bush years and the Bush protests. 4,000 people marching on the street, and they all had exactly the same printed sign. It makes you wonder who printed them. But each one of these signs to me says something just remarkable about what kind of reality these people live in. So let's just kind of start from the left. Trump stop scaring our children is the one on the margin. Trump's not scaring your children, lady. You are. You're the one scaring your children. You're the one talking about Hitler. You're the one talking about the apocalypse and the end times and fingers on the nuclear trigger and all the rest. He's not scaring your children. You are. Above that woman's head is a sign that says resist. Resist what? When I talked about the common sense resistance, I was talking about a philosophical opposition to a bad series of policies and ideas. You're going to resist this? The people voted. You lost the election. That's it. Period. Over. So there's that. Now we start getting to the ones I think are especially interesting. Refugees welcome, says this woman with this sign. The thing that most strikes me about this is that we saw a series of signs that were virtually exactly like this. In fact, this entire scene was largely played out in Sweden, where we saw people lining up to greet the refugees and shaking their hands and throwing flowers at them and big signs that say, refugees welcome here and Muslims welcome here and we love everybody and come on in and it's great. And all of this is virtue signaling, but in many cases, I'm willing to grant that people have a genuine belief that this is the right thing to do. Well, that was in Sweden, I want to say 2014 and 15. They don't have those signs up there anymore because people took them at their word, and they let in a lot of these immigrants and refugees, and things have not turned out so well for Sweden or Germany or France or anywhere else. So we'll come back to that in a minute too, I think. The big sign in the front says no ban. Well, she's right. It is no ban. It's not a ban on Islam. It's a ban on countries who have been destabilized by the Obama regime and who have no particular love for America and certainly don't seem to understand the fundamentals of American values. And then we get to let me go to the one on the far right first, and I'll come back to the one I really think is interesting. Resist hate. Pal, let me tell you something. We're having a rational decision about whether or not to defend our borders. The actual hate that you're talking about comes from a religion that would have had all of those women in the picture stoned to death, if not, probably at the worst case. Best case, they'd probably be put in tents and forced to live in their homes for the rest of their life and not come out without a male escort. That's where the hate is. The hate's not here. This is a reasonable discussion about what we allow into this country and why. The one that's most interesting to me is the one that says, say it loud, say it clear, immigrants are welcome here. Miss, if you take off the sunglasses and start looking around the world at you, you're going to find that these are not immigrants that we're talking about. And this is the key issue. We can go back to me now. I think, Neil, I think people are probably very, very, very desperate for a look at me after this point of all this time. We've got to make this point again and again and again. Refugees are not immigrants. We're not talking about immigrants. We're talking about refugees. Now, immigrants are people who make a decision to come and live in America. They're people who have decided to give up their old life and come to America and live a new life. One of the problems that we see with Islamic immigration is that a significant number of Muslim immigrants, have decided that coming to America means turning America into an Islamic state. We don't know what those numbers are, but they're significant. And when you look at towns where you have Muslim immigration of significant percentage, 20, 30, 40% maybe in Hamtramck, Michigan, what we find is calls for Sharia law, and we find the minarets are blaring out the call to prayer 5 times a day. It can be heard for miles. In London, there's a mosque that's broadcasting so loud it can be heard for 15 or 20 miles, 5 times a day, this call to prayer. This is not what Jews do when they come to America. It's not what Hindus do or Confucians or animists or atheists or anybody coming to America. Buddhists, they don't do this. It's Islam that does this. Now, this brings up the other issue. As I said, they're not immigrants, they're refugees. An immigrant is a person who decides to come and live to America, and at least in the old days, it used to be a person who decided they wanted to become American. Of course they would bring their culture with them. Of course they'd bring the flavors with them. But the idea of a melting pot would be that these ingredients would go into a giant cauldron, and it would come out as one item. That's what a melting pot is. It's an alloy. An alloy you add individual metals to, and it comes out stronger, but it's still one alloy. It's still one material. The left not only doesn't like that, they can't stand it, because if the left lets the melting pot theory stand, then there is no left in this country. The idea that you could come to America legally, go through the process of citizenship, raise your right hand, become an American citizen, become as American as somebody who got off the Mayflower, is an invincible idea. The left simply cannot win when you have America that's e pluribus unum, out of many one. They can't have it. So what they do is they chip away at it and try to do everything they can to get rid of the idea of one culture, one language, one people, out of many one. They want to get rid of that, and they want to set up an America that consists of each one of these tiny little ethnic groups and religious groups, and the smaller the better as far as they're concerned. And that means we're going to have a Syria American, we're going to have a Pakistani American, we're going to have they ideally, they'd like a Guatemalan American, they'd like theoretically would like a Norwegian America, and all of this. And it's all different. They all speak their own languages, and they all have their own cultures, and it's a giant, beautiful salad of diversity, except it doesn't work. It doesn't work anywhere. It hasn't worked here, hasn't worked in Europe, it hasn't worked anywhere. It doesn't even work in Canada. Canadians are the nicest people in the world. It doesn't even work there. It's not working, and it's not working because it's a terrible idea. You have people coming to America because they want what we have, and what we have is, at least until the last 8 years, we're starting to see some signs of it. Again, we have the rule of law. We have an economy that works. We have cooperation. We have the abandonment of age-old hostilities. We have the abandonment of this idea that people are subjects or just masses of people. We decided, what the heck, let's give it a try. Let's liberate half of our population. Let's let women not only vote, let's let them hold jobs and be presidents of companies and everything. And all of that explosion of creativity and so on. And all of these ideas are antithetical to Islam as Islam is written. So incoming Muslim immigrants, not refugees, immigrants, have to make a decision. Are they going to live by the strict strictures, by a very strict reading of what Islam calls them to do, which is Sharia law, conquest, all the rest of it, prayer 5 times a day, overtake the infidel and all the rest of it? Are they going to give that up in order to come to America, or are they going to try and keep it and try and change us to match them? It is the only religion in the world. It's the only belief system that I'm aware of. Well, no, communism, I'm sure, is an example too. But it's the only religion in the world, certainly, that is not only not compatible with American values, it's antithetical to American values. You cannot have these two things at the same time. You cannot have a person who on one hand believes that you have freedom of speech to say anything you want to, and at the other hand believes that anybody who insults the Prophet of Islam needs to be killed. You can't have that kind of conflict inside one person or in one society. You can't have a guy who's in favor of freedom of religion and the ability to have no religion, and in the same body inhabit a person whose religion says, if you leave Islam, you'll be killed. You have to make a decision. And millions of people have made the decision to be Americans. And here's another part of the problem, and that is we don't hear from those people. When we see Islamic terror in America and in Europe, I would have such a completely different attitude about this whole thing. I mean, I would have a 180-degree different attitude about all of this if after every one of these Muslim terror attacks, I saw Muslims in the streets wearing American red, white, and blue and saying, this is not us, this is not America, we don't believe in any of this stuff, we believe in freedom, we're here to be free people. If I saw that, I'd feel completely differently about it, but I don't see that. I don't see that at all. And maybe they're afraid to speak up. I'm sure that's it. But if they're afraid to speak up, that's an indication too. What are they afraid to speak up about? Why are they afraid to speak up? Are they worried that something's going to happen to them? Are they worried that they're going to be hurt, that their families are going to be hurt? So we don't have a right to worry about these things too? Or they don't speak up because fundamentally they're either hedging their bets or they're on their side. They've made their decision, and it's not the decision for the United States. So this is a unique situation, but they're not immigrants. They're refugees. These are people who are running away from something. They're running away from a living hellhole that, to some extent, we have to be fair. Maybe to most extent, we have helped create. Syria was not exactly paradise before Hillary and Barack decided to go in there and start showing how tough they were, but at least it was a stable kind of a hell. But they're running away from something, not running to something. And they're bringing their values with them. And their values are the values of a 7th century cult of death. It's all there is to it. I'm sorry that offends people, but there it is. And this entire thing, all of the vapors that the left is having, and all of the conniption fits and all of the meltdowns are due to one thing and one thing only, and that is that for 8 years we have had a president in this country who absolutely, utterly, completely, totally denied the existence of this being a problem. He wouldn't even say the words Islamic terror. He wouldn't even say it. So what do you expect after 8 years of absolute silence from our federal government? What do you expect? It's the exact same thing we talked about on Friday with the wall. The reason we need a wall is because we didn't have a border. We used to have a border, but when the President of the United States and the federal government tells everybody in the country, no, you don't have a border anymore. Anybody who wants to come in can come in. Then you need a wall, because after 8 years of this kind of flood, you've got to stop this situation from developing. You need to stop it. So if we'd had a border, we wouldn't need a wall. If we'd had a president who talked about, and a federal government that talked about the actual threat of Islamic terrorism, then we could have had an adult conversation about who's in, who's out, and why. But no, we couldn't even have that mentioned. That wasn't even discussed. So now we have to do serious things. And all of these actions that are dramatic actions are taken because for 8 years we did nothing. Not only did we not talk about it, but we actually embraced it. We said, well, there's no such thing as Islamic terrorism, and bring in as many Syrians as we possibly can. What do you expect a people to do after that? What do you expect them to do? We're not going into the streets and pulling people out of their, or pulling people out of their homes and beating them up and throwing them on a train and getting them out. It's not happening. It's not a ban on Islam. It's a ban on countries that are exporting an awful lot of terrorists. And by the way, when you look at these crowds of people in Europe, Europe is the canary in the coal mine. We're not starting here. You know, this is the thing about these liberals. They're just so bloody stupid. They're so stupid. They have no sense of history and they don't learn anything. They're the kind of person that can touch a hot stove, and if their belief system says, well, it's not always going to burn, you just keep trying until we get it right, they'll keep burning their fingers forever and they will never learn. But Europe is 5-10 years further down the road than we are. We see what's happening over there. We see it. We see what the people of Europe are going through. These elitists are putting this on us because they can't stand the idea of a free and independent nation, and that is slowing down their plans for world domination and a big global government. So therefore, eat it. Eat it. You see these people out there say there are no borders. Okay, there are no borders. What does that mean? No, we're all one giant family of humanity. Really? Well, if we're one giant family of humanity and we're all the same, how come these people out there don't get their act together? If we're one giant human family and we're all absolutely the same, then how come we're going to the moon and they're stoning people to death, stoning women to death in the desert? Why is that if we're one big human family? Why aren't they going to the moon? Why aren't they making great stuff? Why aren't we buying all this incredible stuff from Syria? Why don't we have cool programs that we're watching that come to us from Iraq or from Somalia or something? We're not the same. They don't have a right to be here because they don't deserve to be here. The people who can be here, from those countries are people who have to demonstrate that they are going to give up that savagery and that barbarism that they left behind and become new people like all the rest of us and do it the right way and come to this country legally. And if you're not up for that, then you don't belong here. And if you want to say that everybody belongs here, then there's no limit to who doesn't belong here, right? If everybody's allowed in here and there's no borders, then the entire world, 7.5 billion people, should be able to march right into this country and turn it into the rest of the world, which is exactly what they want. If these people were determined to come to America and be Americans, I would not be having this discussion. I'd be talking about how do we find a way to get them in and get them in legally. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about people who are determined to destroy these values. It doesn't matter how many of them there are. What the entire purpose of this travel ban is to find out who's real and who's not, who's serious about coming to America and who's not. Now, before we get to our next segment, there is a couple things that have to be said. I was reading the the LA Times, all the same giant blur of lunacy. However, I am hearing reports that things like people with green cards are being detained and people who have resident alien status are being detained. I've heard reports. That doesn't mean they're true. They came from the mainstream media, so let's take all that with a grain of salt. But I've heard reports that there were some strong-arm tactics going on where immigration people were trying to get people with green cards, with resident alien status, to resign their alien status, to sign a document that forever gave up their resident alien status. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. I'd like to think that's not happening, but I suspect it is happening. This is what happens when all of this stuff gets built up and all this pressure gets built up, but we have to accept the responsibility for this, right? We live where the truth is. That's what I do anyway. That's why I'm a conservative. I try to live where the truth is. If, in fact, we are detaining people or trying to talk people out of green card residency status that they've earned legally, if we're intimidating those people, then that is a terrible injustice, and it's a stupid, unforced error. It just is a dumb, stupid, unforced error. But the overall concept Makes perfect sense to me. And by the way, as I heard Stefan Molyneux point out, basically in 2001, let's get the dates are a little bit wrong, but I want to say they're about the same. Something like 2013, Barack Obama put a 6-month limit on immigration from Iraq. He just simply said, nobody from Iraq at all. We didn't hear a peep. And then in 2015 or 16, it was the Barack Obama administration that determined that these 6 countries were special risks to the United States, and all Donald Trump was he applied what Barack Obama did in 2013 to what Barack Obama recommended in 2016, and the left loses their minds as usual and goes absolutely nuts. So there it is. We're never going to hear the end of this. It's going to keep on going, and this leads us kind of as a segue into our next point, because we will not hear the end of this. The campaign to delegitimize Donald Trump started at about midnight Eastern time on the night of November 8th. So what's going to happen now? Well, they're going to do everything they can to make this into Hitler, and most of them actually believe it. And when somebody compares this to Hitler, you really need to say to them, the only real difference between Donald Trump and Hitler is 52 million dead people. And when you can start producing dead people in ditches, then I'll listen to your argument. And until then, what you are doing is not elevating your argument to some advanced level. What you're basically doing is you're saying people who were murdered in the back of the head, little children who were shot in the back of the head and put into a ditch, old ladies who were clawing the concrete walls to get out of a gas chamber, you're saying that is the equivalent to questioning somebody at the airport for 3 hours. That is a disgraceful argument morally. It's an absolute, utter insult to the people who were actually killed by actual Nazis in actual death camps. And when I hear people like Ashley Judd saying it's the new death camps and we're going to, and rainbow is the new suicide, shut up. Shut up. It's nothing like that at all, and you know it. Start showing me some dead people. Start showing me people put in a ditch and shot. We're trying to control a situation that you people have allowed to fester now, and I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't want to hear it. If you find evidence of that kind of thing, then I am on your side, believe me. But they're not going to find it. And they're not going to find it because it doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist because they don't know how to make an argument. They've never thought about any of this stuff. We're in this mess because Barack Obama for 8 years would not say Islamic terrorism. He wouldn't say it. He just made us think it doesn't exist. We're not that stupid. Donald Trump is president because Donald Trump had the ability to tell the American people that things were true that we knew were true and didn't try to convince us that things that were true that were lies. He just simply said, this is it. This is a problem. He's been misquoted so many times, it's unbelievable. And frankly, this whole thing is essentially a ban on Muslims. It's not. It's not. We're going to have a lot to talk about on this. I get the feeling it's going to keep going and keep going. We're really short on time today, so I'll simply tell you that our membership is what keeps this message coming. We do the show for members. This will be the last week of completely free shows. After that, you get the first 5 or 10 minutes for free on Facebook, and the rest becomes a membership privilege for BillWhittle.com members. I hope you're liking the show. God knows I'm loving doing it. I'm loving it. It's great to be on the news cycle. Oh, that's a loud sound. And it's great to be on the news cycle, and it's great to be able to talk about these things as they happen. So we'd love to have you be members, because the more members we have, the more resources we have to get these messages out there, to promote this show and all of these things that we'll be doing for young people. We're going to start premiering our TPUSA people videos for young people starting tomorrow, I think. Tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. Okay, so we just have a final segment here. We've only got a couple minutes. It's about all it deserves. So let's go to our second segment, Neil, which is Have We Passed Peak Celebrity? There's Ashton Kutcher. He's speaking at the SAG Awards. The SAG Awards are one of 200,000 or 300,000 awards that the left gives to itself every year in order to proclaim their virtue and their talent. Ashton Kutcher at the SAG Awards said, "You're welcome. Muslim refugees, you're welcome in my America." I can go back to me, I think, now. "You're welcome in my America," he says, "but you're not welcome in my neighborhood." That's the part that always goes unsaid, right? You're welcome in my America so long as you live with somebody else. You're not welcome in my neighborhood because Americans aren't welcome in my neighborhood. No one's welcome in my neighborhood. Where I live, Mr. Ashton Kutcher, where Mr. Ashton Kutcher lives, isn't a compound secured by private police in case the actual police don't get there in time when somebody crosses and puts a foot on his property. This kind of hypocrisy, this kind of absolute blindness, do they think we're really that stupid? Yes, they do. Why do they think we're that stupid? Because they're that stupid. That's why they believe this. That is exactly it in a nutshell. You're welcome in my America. just not in my neighborhood, and certainly not on my property. You miserable, low-life hypocrite. You miserable, low-life hypocrite. Do you people never, ever get tired of lying through your teeth? Or is it true that you actually do believe this, that you don't see this gigantic, horrendous difference between what you say and what you do? Huh? Which one is it? I'm inclined to think that you're just too dumb to see it. You don't get to say you're welcome in my America until you start saying you're welcome in my neighborhood, Ashton. You know full well, 100% full well, the same way that Angela Merkel knows full well that these refugees and these refugees are not immigrants, these refugees of fighting age men are going to live in neighborhoods that you're never even going to see. And if they decide to get a little religious one day, that's not going to be your problem. That's going to be a tragedy that you'll be able to light a candle for on camera and be able to, to be able to talk about the great tragedy of the lack of brotherhood and all the rest of it. You do not ever have to live with the consequences of these decisions that you make. But the American people do, and the American people have had enough of you guys. I think we have passed peak celebrity. I think peak celebrity, which I'm defining as the maximum amount of influence that Hollywood has on the pop culture, I am quite convinced that peak celebrity occurred with Meryl Streep at the Golden Globes Award. I'm absolutely convinced that was the absolute height of peak celebrity. And the response to them is exactly what Donald Trump tweeted out. You're a has-been, you're overrated, you're a loser, and you're a sore loser. Who cares what you think? I was finally reading on the SAG Awards. One of these actors got up there, and I don't remember her name because her name's not very memorable. I'm going to invent a name, and I'm going to invent the name Kimberly Johnson because I simply don't remember the name. So this is an invented name, but basically during the SAG Awards, this actress got up there and said, people are saying that actors shouldn't have a chance to speak, but we're the messengers of humanity. We're the people who convey human emotions. We're the ones who are most qualified to speak about this. No, you're not. No, you're not. Your opinion means the same as anybody else's. You're mostly well underinformed compared to the rest of the American population, and you have a megaphone because you're pretty. That doesn't mean you have a megaphone because you're deep or because you're right or because you're interesting. You have a megaphone because you're pretty. You have a megaphone because the genetic lottery went your way. Congratulations. I'm very happy for you. But it doesn't mean you know anything about this. You don't have more right to a megaphone than any other American citizen. You do not have an insight on things because you're a celebrity. But this person, who I think what her name, Katherine Johnson, Kimberly Johnson, whatever, whoever her name was, she basically got up there and said something like, we're the ones who are the ambassadors of emotion and integrity and morality. And she said, I am Kimberly Johnson, and I am an actress. And my agent is reachable at johnd at cnc.com, and here's my headshot. And if you're interested, I can also sing and I can play younger. I can do red hair. I can do all of it. I'm an actor. Look at me. Look how brave I am. What an honor it is to be an actor. What an amazing, amazing, amazing statement of bravery and courage. I'm an actor. Yeah, okay. Well, you want to talk about Adolf Hitler. You want to compare people to Hitler. You want to compare people to Hitler because you don't want to compare him to Stalin or Mao. We all know why that is. You just imagine what it's like to come up to a concert in Nazi Germany in let's pick an interesting time, 1937, somewhere in there, and imagine that you're giving a concert or a show. You're doing a show, you're doing a play for top Nazis, and all of the Nazis are there, and Goering is there, and there's Goebbels, and there's Himmler, and there's Adolf Hitler himself came to see the show. And at the end of it, you stand up and say, I am Kimberly Johnson, and I am a Jew. That is courage, and you will pay the price for that courage. You'll be killed. You'll be killed. That's courage. You standing up on the stage and declaring that you're an actor doesn't require any courage at all. It just requires narcissism and requires a fatuous, shallow, self-centered view of history. When you start comparing these two things, you are not, as I said, elevating yourself to their level. You are simply degrading the multiple murders that were committed by actual monsters who called themselves National Socialists. And you don't want to talk about the murders, the 30 million murders that Stalin committed or the 50 million that Mao committed, because those were just small experiments on your gigantic socialism world that you profess to enjoy. You like to talk about socialism because it immunizes you against the claim that you're just another 1%er out of touch with everything. You jet around the world, and I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I believe that you believe it, but I don't believe it. And you really don't believe it either. The last thing I want to say about peak celebrity is a point I made before, and I think it needs to be made again for you to understand why these people work the way they do. The perfect example of this is Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio, excuse me one second. Leonardo DiCaprio will get on his private jet and fly 8,000 miles by himself to receive an award for environmental activism. First of all, if I thought that carbon was causing the end of the earth, that would be the last thing I would do. If I was an actual spokesman for the actual ecology, for the actual planet, let's just say this was true. Let's just say it was true. If I was a spokesman for this movement, this is the last thing I'll do. Glenn Reynolds nailed it. He said, I'll believe it's a crisis when the people telling me it's a crisis start acting like it's a crisis. In other words, imagine that you believe that eating olives causes global warming and therefore is the end of the world as we know it. If it turned out that you believed and the science was settled that the eating of olives caused the end of the earth through global warming, why would you go out and eat 7,000 times more olives than the nearest American? Why would you do that? If I believed it in my soul that eating olives, for example, was the end of the world through global warming, you would never see me eat another olive again, right? Because number one, I would be contributing to the problem, and number two, if I'm going to be a face of a movement, why would I be a guy who eats 8,000 olives a day going to get an award for being an olive restricting kind of guy? You see what I'm saying? It's nuts. But the point I'm trying to make about that is here. It's not the hypocrisy. This is the psychology behind it. I'm telling you, I know these people. The psychology about it can be understood best if you think of it this way. Leonardo DiCaprio is not using the jet to promote global warming awareness. He's using global warming awareness so that he can have the jet. Once you understand that, it gets very, very, very simple. Very simple. All of this becomes crystal clear when you understand that everything they do has to be reversed. He doesn't complain and activate global warming. He doesn't speak about global warming. He doesn't do all of this stuff because, he doesn't have the jet to go around and do all these things that raise awareness. He doesn't have the jet to do that. He does this so that he can have the jet. Liberals don't talk about poverty and socialism because of their privileged position. It's their privileged position that lets them talk about poverty and socialism. It's a fig leaf. It's cover. It's cover. It's cover for insecure people who have no sense of self, who suddenly find themselves multi-millionaires. And instead of just saying, you know what, I worked very hard for this, I'm very talented, I earned every dollar of it, they are stuck in a philosophy that demonizes wealth and achievement. So what do? They get up there as they award themselves more money for multi-million-dollar jobs that they just did. Meryl Streep comes off a job. She gets paid millions and millions of dollars. The people standing behind Meryl Streep get paid maybe $100 a day. There's no more greater income inequality in one place than there is on a movie set. And they congratulate themselves and talk about how wonderful they are. And we're never going to hear the end of this, but I said this was the end of peak celebrity because I'm telling you now, guys, I don't know if you feel the same way as I do. I used to listen to them. I never was influenced by them, but I at least listened to them and I thought it was annoying. I don't even hear it anymore. It's like a buzzing sound now. Hitler, racism, Hitler, homophobic. It's like a gnat. It's like some kind of background noise that won't go away. You know what it is? Like tinnitus. I have tinnitus. I have pretty bad tinnitus. It's like this constant ringing in your ears. You're not aware of it most of the time. Most of the time your brain filters it out, but every now and then something happens, and it's just like, it's this background noise that doesn't do anything anymore. You've blown your credibility, you blew it. People like you and Bill Maher and Michael Moore, you want to call George Bush Hitler and you want to call Mitt Romney Hitler? Okay. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Donald Trump there's a lot wrong with, I keep saying there's a lot wrong with Donald Trump. I'm seeing less and less of it. But I will say this. There were some things about this executive order that could have been done much better. With that said, I have never seen this kind of political courage. I've never seen this kind of physical courage before. Donald Trump is president because Donald Trump doesn't care about what the left thinks. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care. And we'll talk about that sometime soon, maybe even tomorrow, the idea of Stockholm Syndrome and how all of the Republican establishment prior to this man was just completely victim to it. And now we've got somebody who simply doesn't care. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the publicity. He doesn't need the job. He doesn't need any of it. And he has moved so quickly on his campaign promises. It's just boom, wall, boom, immigration, ban on Syrian refugees, boom, regulations slash, boom. But he's been in office 10 days. I'm impressed. I'm going to keep holding his feet to the fire, as we all should. You know, if it turns out that he does things that we don't like, then we should call him on it. We're not going to be the left who criticizes George Bush for having launched invasions or wars in 2 countries while Barack Obama dropped 100,000 bombs on 7 countries without a declaration of war and without congressional approval, and the left is utterly silent. We're not those kind of hypocrites. But with that said, I am very impressed so far, and it's been an amazing ride, and I think it's going to get more amazing every single day. We have not heard the left. They have not yet begun to fight, and every time they fight, things get a little bit better for us. Went a little over today, but we're having some fun. Don't forget that Bill Whittle Live is available every day. It's live streaming at 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern, and that this will be the last week where you get to see all of it for free. We'd love to have you become members because membership is what allows us to get this message out. Advertising is what we usually used to use as a model. We don't have an advertising model anymore. This is how the world works now. Internet is free. TV is free. People expect Internet TV to be free, but it's not free. It costs money to do all this stuff, and there's just a few thousand people who are paying for everybody else, and if you've got any sense of the importance of this kind of work, then we need you to become one of the people that are helping us rather than one of the people that are just watching us. You go to BillWhittle.com and click on Become a Member, and we would be very delighted to have you. We have a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun behind the scenes, too. Running a little late today, but that was fun, you know, and it's nice not to have to listen to anybody else. It's good to be the boss. Good to be your own king. Every day this show gets looking a little better. Who knows, maybe even tomorrow we might even put something on that giant black screen behind me there. Right now it's kind of impressive in its negative space awesomeness. It's great to be, hey, look at that. Anthony Manwaring says, brand new member here. Congratulations, Anthony. Thank you very much. I'll be curious to know if you feel the way that so many of other members feel. They talk all the time about feeling just good about this, that they're part of something that's doing some good for America. And I will be happy to see you and happy to sign your DVD and get that out the door for you, too. Okay, that's it for Bill Whittle Live today. Thank you. We will see you. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'm sure there will be news for us to talk about, and so we'll talk about it then. Until then, be careful. Love your country, love your family, and be kind to people, except for people who don't deserve it. Those people you need to be prepared to smack.